With June now behind us, can the Royals start to heat up with the month of July coming up? We discuss all that next with Jack Johnson of Lockdown Royals podcast right here on the KC Sports Authority podcast.
Hey, what's good, y'all? It's your boy JD6 here. I'm with my man. Shout out to KC Sports Authority. Make sure y'all go check that podcast out, man.
You heard the man.
And welcome into another episode of the KC Sports Authority podcast. Keegan Russell, Christopher Tenpenny here, and we are joined today by the guy that talks the most Royals that I know, at least, Mr. Jack Johnson of the Locked On Royals podcast. So we can discuss how the Royals month of June could hopefully propel them into a hot July ahead of the All-Star break and trade deadline. But Jack, how's it going, man? Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, going pretty good this morning, and always a blast joining you guys on the podcast.
Yeah, we appreciate you having you on. For those of you that are checking us out, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button below. We're getting close to 700 subscribers, so thank you so much for those that have supported us so far. Make sure you also hit the thumbs up button on this video so other Royals fans like yourselves can find our podcast. You can also check us out on Spotify and give us a follow on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at KCSA Pod. Well, the month of June for the Royals was, not the best. We ended very strong with this big monster series win over Cleveland this weekend, but overall, a 12-15 month of June. We saw just about every phase of this team struggle, from bullpen to starting pitching wavering some, the offense going cold for about 2 weeks, even the defense struggling quite a bit, a lot of errors being forced. And some of those were against a not so great competition. We do know that the Royals had that insanely tough stretch in June against division leaders all across the league. But then you had some cupcake series against Oakland and Miami that you just didn't take advantage of to the best that we should have. But they do find a way to smooth things over at the end of the month, with Cleveland coming to town this weekend, take 3 out of 4. That was huge for them going into July. So let's just start here with what's the pulse you guys have on this team coming off of that rough month going into July.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the schedule that they had in June. I made the prediction that if they were able to survive June, hold on to a playoff spot, then they would be a playoff team when it's all said and done. Now, at the beginning of June, I think they had a 4.5 or 5 game lead for a playoff spot over Boston. But actually in the Central, they were still 5 games back at Cleveland, and now they're just 7 games back. So you look at, what they went through in June. It was their worst month of the year. And I think every team, even playoff teams, go through a rough patch. They were able to survive it and finish the month of June on a high. If they had played much better in the beginning of June, in the middle of June, and then limped toward the end of June, I think I would have been a little bit more concerned going into the All-Star break. But to come back home, take a series against Miami, you can never, feel badly about taking a series regardless of the opponent. And then you take 3 or 4 from Cleveland. You got to be feeling like right now this could be their turning point of getting some serious momentum going into the offseason. Because even J.J. Piccolo said, if we are where we are on June 1st, on July 1st, that's when I think we can start being aggressive, really identifying who this team is, and if we are a playoff team, and if we can help them out a little bit by getting a piece or two.
Yeah, and look at what Keegan was just saying, too. Like, the errors was up. The rotation had about 10 games, two runs through the rotation where they struggled a little bit. Offense disappeared. And there were a lot of issues, and they still went 12-15 in the month. Like that, that's a bad month, but it's not horrific like we're used to. So, like, this is still a good team that was able to weather that storm. And kind of just what Jack was saying was, like, they're playing well now into July. Tampa, I think Tampa's a team that you need to bury them. I think they're kind of one of those fringe teams. If you go and take 2 out of 3, I think they're smart enough to where they may be sellers here in a couple of weeks. And then Boston, they're right on their tail. They come up right before the All-Star game. Win that series in Fenway, that would be great going into the break. So there's some chances to really push some teams out of the race while also making your stamp on the teams right behind you.
Yeah, just as June might have been the most unfavorable part of the schedule, July's got some stretches here that could definitely be not just favorable, but there's tons of off days, especially with the All-Star break coming up to give them some time off. But we've also surpassed the first half of the season officially now as far as game total. Jack, what's your thoughts on I guess this first half as a whole? Do you think the Royals are right on par? Did June pull us back down to reasonable expectations? We still had a schedule. What's your thoughts there?
From the beginning of the year, I mean, it's hard not to look at 47 and 39 and think they've really overachieved to this point. I mean, they are a team that was coming off a franchise record in losses, or at least tied the '05 team at 106. I mean, for anybody out there that even had, hopeful thoughts of this team to actually stay 47 and 39, and let's be honest, in the American League right now, the toughest division in baseball. They have three teams in the playoffs in Minnesota and Kansas City. That's even more than the AL East, who I consider to be the best division in baseball. But it's hard to argue with half of the playoff teams coming from the AL Central, and the Royals right now are one of those teams, and they've survived a tailspin, if you will. There was definitely a moment after that series in Arlington where even I thought, this could be that stretch that kind of pulls them back down to earth, and then all of a sudden you look up and you're 4 games back of a wild card spot. And though that's not the end of the world, considering they had such a healthy cushion in the wild card race, and then to lose that, and then thinking about playing super well in the second half, it would have been tough to envision. But this team all year long has had this mentality that I think very much resembles Matt Quatrero, in that he's very even keeled. He doesn't get too emotional after wins. He doesn't get too emotional after losses. Now, we've seen him get tossed more a few times in the last few weeks, but most of the time,
Rightfully so.
yeah, rightfully so. I think it was the perfect time to. But I'll see fans on Twitter say, that's the worst loss I've ever seen. I've never seen, a less energetic team. I can't remember a time I felt this frustrated. And what's funny to me is, that's always going to happen within a fan base. But I can tell you wholeheartedly that all of the losses we've thought this year were crushing, were absolutely demoralizing. It doesn't really sit with them that long. Now, I think it still is in the back of their mind. The one I bring up is when James MacArthur blew that game against Milwaukee with 2 outs and nobody on. That was probably out of their mind the minute they left the ballpark, because they knew they had a game the next day. And that comes from your manager, where if you are this highly emotional guy and you're getting ejected and you're screaming and throwing things, you get down in the clubhouse and you tear into your team, well, maybe at that point you believe that game was the end all be all. That's a game we can't recover from. Where Matt Quatrero, whether it's that game or the 8-run deficit in which they came back, he's going to sound the exact same of celebrate that win. We got to go take another one here in 24 hours or so. And in this Cleveland series, I think past Royals teams would look at the way the game went on Saturday, where the foul ball was called a home run, and go, well, it's just not in the cards for us. And now Cleveland has momentum, and then you get your butt kicked on Sunday.
Yeah.
Quite the opposite. The Royals hammered Cleveland yesterday because that game to them was done and gone. It didn't matter anymore. And I think that's been the most impressive part about this team, and why I think a second half push is possible, because with that bad stretch they had in Arlington and Oakland, that bad road trip, they responded pretty well, where a lot of teams would go, there was our rough stretch. Now it's really hard to get kick-started again.
Yeah, you can definitely tell the culture has completely flipped. 2 years ago, not to speak bad on that team, but between Mike Matheny and Whit Merrifield, there was not a lot of positivity after a demoralizing loss like that, to where you had no faith the next day the boys were going to come out and do anything to get better. Whereas this year, they could have a bad loss, and then, like you said, tomorrow, new game, let's get back to it. But yeah, I think it's been a solid first half. Can't really complain about much. I do want to ask you though, what do you think is the biggest success of the first half of the season?
I think it would have to be the starting rotation. I mean, I think it is such an incredible thing that no matter who's taking the ball, every fifth day, you've got this confidence that they're going to pitch really well. And like any rotation, some guy's not going to have his best. Cole Reagans didn't have his best yesterday. Brady Singer's had times where he didn't have his best. Alec Marsh got roughed up in Oakland. The only guy that always seems to have his best is Seth Lugo, and that's a pickup that I'm sure at the All-Star break, it's going to get more national coverage, especially if he gets into the All-Star game, because Seth Lugo had this transformation from a reliever, a good one at that, to becoming a starter like this, where he's pacing for over 200 innings, leading the league in wins, leading the league in quality starts. That's been the anchor for this rotation. And what's awesome to think about is if this team does get a push in September and finds a way to grab the 6 seed or the 5 seed in the American League, I know that the World Series is likely not in the cards for this team. You never know in the playoffs, but I have the expectation that this team is not going to be hoisting the trophy in the end. We've never seen that happen in baseball for a team to go from 106 losses to winning the World Series the following year. But I look at playing a Seattle. I look at playing a Baltimore or a New York. Yeah, you could look at the Royals and say that's a young and inexperienced group. They've got a lot of holes in this team. But in a best-of-3 wild card series, you're going to have to face Cole Reagans and Seth Lugo, assuming they're healthy. And then Michael Wacha being a Game 3 pitcher is a lot better than what some teams have out there. I mean, there are playoff teams right now that don't have as good of a rotation as the Royals, and that's what's kept them 8 games over 500. That's what's kept them from bottoming out, because those long losing streaks, to me, occurred not because your offense slumps. It's because your pitching staff slumps. It's because they bottom out. Because then it's putting all the pressure on the world to have an offense score 8 or 9 runs if your starting pitching isn't good. In the Royals' bad stretch, the pitching was still doing fine. They had good starts from Brady Singer and Arlington. They had a good start from Wacha, good start from Marsh. Against the Dodgers, they had 3 straight quality starts and only took 1. So it's never been 5 or 6 games in a row where the pitching just can't find their footing again. That's been the most reassuring thing, and I believe the biggest success, because if the Royals didn't have a Seth Lugo or Wacha in this rotation, I think they would honestly be 15 to 16 games worse than they are right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on the flip side, how about biggest disappointment of the season so far?
I'm a big MJ Melendez guy. I've always had the optimism for him, and even though the large part of the fan base is fed up with him, he's been better of late. But to me, having that disappointment offensively has been, I think, something that caught me off guard a little bit. Like, I understand MJ Melendez has never been a great big league player, but you took the second half success, you took him being in a more protected lineup. He had a full season to prepare to be better defensively, and I thought that would help the confidence. But the stretch that he went on from the end of April to, let's say, June 15th was one of the worst in baseball. And that, I really do think, brought the lineup down as a whole, because it forced the Royals to get creative on how they wanted to construct the lineup. I was hoping that, they play the same 5 guys every single night when Massey's healthy, of Garcia, Bobby Witt Jr., Vinny Perez, and Massey. You have Renfroe hitting well, Melendez hitting well, and now Isbell hitting well. Well, then you feel better about what this lineup can do and what their ceiling is. But, in a year that felt so make or break for him to be at this point, I would say it's very disappointing. And then the bullpen. I thought the bullpen was going to be one of those smooth spots of the team. I thought the rotation actually would go through their lumps more than the bullpen, because they invested so much into it. But a lot of guys have been a disappointment this year, and a lot of guys have really gone through a bad couple of weeks. I thought Nick Anderson was going to be a lot better than he was. I thought, the John Schreiber in April was going to carry on most of the season. That hasn't been the case. MacArthur took a little bit of a dip here and there. But at the end of the day, it's not like they went out there and acquired 4 or 5 lockdown bullpen guys. Yeah. They acquired a bunch of journeyman guys that most of the time can throw strikes, get soft contact, and when they're pitching well, we'll see what we saw against Cleveland, where they just were able to do their job. When it's not going well, we'll see them implode like they did on that first part of June, where nobody can protect a 1-run lead or a 2-run lead. And I think that also kind of with Melendez has been a big disappointment.
It just so happens that all 4 of those bullpen additions have had some struggles at the same time. Now, Will Smith has been picking up things as of late. We'll see how long that can continue to be. All four of those guys, unfortunately, their numbers are all worse than a year ago, and that does not bode well for a playoff push because you got to have some bullpen pieces. Chris, you got anything on those two subjects?
Well, Stratton will go like 8 games looking lights out and then have back-to-back three-run innings. And so like I don't mind Stratton out of those four the most. I think he's had the most promise, I guess, if you will. But I guess I wanted to ask you, Jack, who in the minors? I know we've seen Will Klein. I know everyone talks about Pennington. Who do you think should get that next shot to come up and I know he's been hurt. I kind of like Colin Selby's stuff. I think his profile is a lot like MacArthur if they can tweak it. But I was just curious who you thought might be that next guy to get a shot.
Yeah, Colin Selby to me isn't identical to James MacArthur, but it wouldn't shock me if he has some form of success for this team, whether it be this year or next year. Because as you said, Christopher, I think the stuff is really good. I mean, if you throw a 97, 98 mile an hour sinker, let's work with that a little bit. And, we spoke with the Royals analytics department a few times in Surprise about acquiring MacArthur and when they make moves like that. And anytime they pick up somebody like this, I believe it was Jesus Tirico too, or Tinico. I'm blanking on the last name. Somebody that has 98, 99 mile an hour stuff, terrible numbers. Same with Colin Selby, but it at least has the light bulb flick on where you go, why make that move? Where in the past, I would say, well, they're just needing depth right now. You just, it's a waiver wire pickup. It doesn't really matter. And maybe it doesn't matter. But now the Royals analytics department is a little bit more thorough with who they're looking for and why they're looking for them. For Colin Selby, I wouldn't be shocked if we saw him back in Kansas City. My personal favorite would be Walter Pennington. However, the longer he's been in the minor leagues, the more I'm concerned with how the Royals view him, because with their struggles and his numbers down there where he's striking out north of 14 guys per 9, he's walking less than 2, his whip is well below league average, his ERA is below 2. You ask the question, why hasn't he gotten a shot? I mean, what is there that we're not seeing? Sometimes with the high strikeout numbers, the high walk numbers, that's not the case. It's the hard hit rate. That's not the case. The only thing I've heard is spin rate, that it's not as impressive as a spin rate, and the Royals love guys with good spin rates. That's, why they found Cole Reagans or wanted Cole Reagans really badly, was because of the spin rate. Not saying Walter Pennington's the same guy or has the same expectation, but that to me makes me wonder if they look at him and say, it's not going to translate as well as we think to the big league level. He can dominate in Omaha, but we need somebody who can dominate or provide stability up in Kansas City. The rebuttal to that, or the devil's advocate, is they've thrown a lot of guys in the bullpen up there that just have stuff that can't play, and they keep getting chances, right? I think Carlos Hernandez, unfortunately, just doesn't have stuff that plays at this level. And that's crazy to say for a guy that throws 100, but he's very hittable, right? He's been hittable his entire career. Better numbers this year, but I would say in a high leverage spot, I don't know if I'm putting a ton of faith into Carlos Hernandez. But you can't tell me that some guys out there that have appeared in the bullpen this year have better stuff than Walter Pennington, or at least deserve more of a shot. That's why I think, even at bare minimum, I want to see. If he comes up here and he's the guy that throws when it's 6-0 or 8-1, it just provides you a different angle, a different look. And I think the Royals will give him that shot. I'd be floored if he got through the entire year with those type of numbers and never got a chance to pitch in the Kansas City bullpen.
Well, I think he needs like an injury, because like how teams are weird about their lefties, because like Will Smith and Zerpa and now Sandlong, I know he gave up 2 runs yesterday, but like they've all been pretty solid recently. The life of bullpen up and down. And then you've got Chris Bubich, who's about to come back, and they've already talked about him being
He's
used.
Probably going to be a priority over Pennington.
So like, and like you said, well, Pennington's not throwing, that doesn't have a great spin rate, and he's topping out at like 94, normally sitting around 92. Like, it may be better for them to almost use him as a trade piece. If you like the lefties you have, his Omaha numbers look so good in a league where AAA hitting is so high up. Maybe you can increase his value without risking I don't know. I'm spitballing here just because, like you said, he deserves a shot with how this bullpen has been playing, but they haven't given
I want to say it was one of the last 3 Sundays before the game started, with JJ's weekly Sunday talks. I want to say he had mentioned something about, they were asking him about Pennington. Say, hey, he's got great stuff. He's been good. He's obviously going to get up here at some point. I don't think he flat out said, hey, we have too many lefties in the bullpen right now, but he kind of made some remarks that, hey, it's got to be the right fit with the guys that are here currently. We don't want to just bring somebody up because they're deserving. It's got to make sense with what we have. So that could be some of it. You've got a lot of lefties here now. And it does feel like Bubic is going to have the priority as the next lefty up here because of how they plan on using him long term. The other two guys I really liked, I want to get your take on. Jonathan Bolin, why we haven't seen him with his stuff and what his vast pitches he's got, why they haven't transitioned him into the bullpen at the minor league level. And then Veneziano also has some decent stuff there. Both of them have higher strikeout rates in the minors, but both have still been listed as probable starters at the minor league level, despite the fact that there's not really a path forward in the starting rotation. What are your thoughts on those two?
Yeah, I think with Bowen, I hate to say it, but I just see out of the bullpen very much what Carlos Hernandez gives you. I think you can be intrigued by the high-powered fastball, and that's something the Royals need. We also saw in that start against Toronto, though it's all we have on Jonathan Bowen for this year. I know he pitched a little bit last year, but when I saw him in that outing, I thought, man, if he's throwing 97, 98 as a starter, what could he get to in one inning out of the bullpen? I still would love to see it, but I'm not sure the high-powered fastball is going to be enough for him. It also factors in that, both these guys, Veneziano and Bolin, they're not young, high upside prospects. They're more so of developmental projects where, if they do work out, you got to credit the developmental team of Bolin had Tommy John surgery and then really had to work his way back up. He's more of an older prospect. Veneziano, I do think can play in the bullpen, but as we just said, and as you said, Keegan, with the group right now, there's too many lefties, and there's too many lefties that deserve a shot in Kansas City. So it's who do you really want up there? If Bubic is ready to go now, he's going to be their top option. If he's not, I would think because of the 40-man, Veneziano would get that chance, but never more than a long relief role, in my opinion, because he kind of bridges that gap between a starter and a long relief guy. I feel that that's his role in Kansas City, and I would love for them to go after somebody or give somebody a chance that can help your high leverage situations. I'm not sure I see Veneziano or Bolin, for that matter, in high leverage. Love Bolin's stuff. I just see a lot of similarity with Carlos Hernandez where he can blow it by guys, but if somebody squares him up, I mean, he's not going to keep many runs from scoring in any sort of situation.
Yeah. Let's go back to Melendez for a minute. Obviously, a very disappointing season. Don't really know what the answer is to fixing him because the other problem the Royals have is that outfield production hasn't been great anyway. They've already sent Nelson Velasquez down. So if there was a move to send Melendez down, then you're bringing somebody back up that hasn't proven themselves as a hitter, whether it's Velasquez or Drew Waters. But is it about time to give Melendez a couple weeks down at AAA, maybe going into the All-Star break? Do the same thing we did last year and hope that the All-Star break gives them a chance to reset. But if you were GM of this team, what would you do with Melendez and how would you solve that outfield offensive struggles?
I think since that series against Seattle, the 8-run comeback, I think MJ Melendez has been showing, or at least almost showing, what he did a little bit last year. The power numbers came back a little bit. The walk rate came back a little bit. And there's no denying that, his numbers this year have been really bad, but also I think a bit unlucky. You look at his expected batting average, expected on base, expected slugging, all of that. It should be better than 180. But the good thing is this is currently, and it's not saying much, this is currently the best stretch he's had since the beginning of the year, back in April. So I think the Royals are looking at him and saying, you're getting some confidence, some momentum going into the All-Star break, where after you got that week off, you came back and were one of our more valuable hitters for last year's squad. I remember we had talked in one of our previous interviews about Bobby Witt Jr.'s second half last year stole the show because he went from a guy with a ton of upside to an MVP candidate, whereas MJ Melendez's second half got overshadowed because of how good Bobby Witt Jr. was. But I almost look at the upside for this lineup and the potential if MJ Melendez gives you that second half version of him from last year. And I think the Royals believe the same thing. There is not a single player in Omaha that can provide this lineup a boost. I really do believe that. Nelson Velasquez, maybe if he can get that reset, come back up, he's done it at the big league level. I do not believe Drew Waters gives this team a boost. I do not believe Nick Pratto does. It's only been 2 games. I'm sorry to say this for the guy, but I don't see CJ Alexander as a boost. I wanted to see him get a shot because he absolutely earned it. But the Royals are either going to boost this lineup by an MJ Melendez turning things on the second half, or they go outside of the organization and make a trade. But the good thing is, with 2 of their outfielders, they stuck with them and it's worked out. Hunter Renfroe was at 140 something, and it seemed easy to go, why the hell are you still giving this guy at bats, right? I mean, what makes sense? Why is Drew Waters, who's hitting 340 in Omaha with better defense, not in front of Hunter Renfroe? And the reality is the coaches and the organization know their guys better, and they have minds in their organization saying, he gets off the slow starts, he's going to be able to turn it on. We like the underlying metrics for him. And now Hunter Renfroe, all of a sudden up to 210, and he's been hitting 330 or 340 since May, and that's including the injury that he had. Seems like he's picked up where he left off. Now you feel good that you stuck with him. Kyle Isbell. I mean, we always knew about the defense that Kyle Isbell had, and it was just be a league average bat. Well, now he kind of feels like a league average bat hitting about 240, and I will take 240 from Kyle Isbell every single day. And then with Melendez, it's kind of he's the last piece of this puzzle of if he hits 230 in the second half, but an OBP of 330, that's going to be enough, in my opinion, to get this lineup over the hump or to avoid that tough stretch, because it's just one more bat in there you get to have heating up. I mean, when Bobby Wood Jr. or Garcia or Salvi slumps, you got some of these guys that are hitting, and that's going to be the difference from you on the outside looking in the playoffs or actually holding one of those spots when it's all said and done in September.
Yeah, and heating up is, again, one of the words we're looking to this month of July. Vinny is on a somewhat hot streak right now. I think he's gone 7 straight games now with an RBI. Bobby, of course, is turning it on. Salvi, who went through about a 2-week stretch, getting back and going. Massey getting back up here, hopefully getting some more consistent at bats, not on the field, but in the lineup, getting some more bats can get him going. We'd love to see Michael Garcia get back to almost what he was. I don't know if he's ever going to be the 290 to 320 hitter he started out as up here, but if he can get closer to 260, 270, he's been great with runners in scoring position, but he's had a lot of soft lineouts and pop-ups last couple of weeks. I'd love to see him heat up. But as you look up and down this lineup, we know that the one corner outfield spot is still an offensive hole. With the move of Massey going to mostly off the field and Garcia sliding to second, what do you think the future of that third base spot looks like? They've been using Nick Lofton. Lofton's looked okay. There's not a ton there, but he's been decent in his outings there. Chris and I were talking the other day. I think it says that there's a potential move coming at third base, but I don't know who that realistic third base target is right now that's available on the trade market or in free agency, or if it's just, hey, we're going to convert Lofton because we think his power potential could be there.
Yeah, I'm going to echo something that David Lesky said, I want to say last night, or maybe it was earlier today. It's early in the morning, so I believe it was last night. One of the greatest Royal Twitter follows out there, and great stuff inside the Crown. But I hated the move for Garcia to go to second base because of how good he was defensively, and the reasoning for Matt Contreras sounded a bit suspicious, to be honest. It was, we want, to have the flexibility there, and Nick Lofton's played a lot of third. Well, Nick Lofton hasn't played a lot of third base before. So it seemed like he was
just getting used to second base.
He was just getting used to second base, exactly. And so to move one of the best defensive third basemen over to second base kind of feels more like they are looking for somebody, maybe don't have a deal in place, but trying to see if that defense translates to second base, which I imagine it will with Michael Garcia. But you also have to factor in Michael Massey can't play another position, and he is going to be coming back in the second half. I don't see them DHing Massey full time there, but the Royals could make a move to kind of add to that flexibility. And the guy that David Lesky brought up was Luis Guillorme of the Angels, who would also kind of fill that void of the lineup spot. His on base is over 350 with the Angels this year. Really hit that resurgence. Didn't think he was going to last long in Anaheim, but he has, and could be a very cheap addition for this team. You would not have to spend much. and would give you that leadoff bat, a guy that does get on base, a guy that has been doing that for a team now for the last 30, 35 games or so. And Garcia moving over to second base just for a few weeks and not even getting the chance to go back to third during this homestand, it does alert me a little bit that maybe they're trying to see if Garcia can play second. So when they make a move like that, for the hypothetical here, let's say it's Luis Guillorme. And if Luis Guillorme is playing second or third base, well, Garcia can play second base. And if there's a day that Garcia plays third and Guillorme can't, well, now Massey can play second base, and then Guillorme DHs or something like that. So that's kind of the interesting part of this. I don't believe the Royals would just be moving their best defensive third baseman to second base to give Nick Lofton reps at third base. I don't think that would be too smart. And I almost wonder, because of how this timeline has mapped out, that it makes sense, or at least they are trying to make a move there, and what the asking price could be for Guillorme, or maybe somebody out there we're not even talking about to play third base.
Just for clarity's sake, because there are two Luises in that lineup in Anaheim. I've been seeing it as it being Rengifo, not Guillorme.
Yes, I say
Just
Guillorme.
wanted,
I said, yeah, Rengifo.
Just want to make sure we were on the same page there. The other one, I half jokingly with Chris said this the other day, just because he's back from injury and finding the lineup. But what if there's still some pop left with Miguel Sano?
Yeah,
I would think he's got to be cheap.
That is a DH.
You know, that's a DH and feels like a bigger version of Nelson Velasquez. But yeah, the Angels do feel like a destination to go make a trade with, because we have heard, you know, the rumblings of Carlos Estevez as well. Rengifo, as you just said, not Guillorme, of course, and they're going to be sellers. Like, they are absolutely going to be sellers, and they're out of division, and it feels like that's a team they're going to target. So in the last couple of days, couple of weeks, have gone up and down that roster and just tried to see if any of those guys make sense. I think it's going to be very affordable. They also have a depleted farm system. I believe, I'm not mistaken, the worst farm system in baseball. So they're going to be trying to find any ways they can bolster it. And they're going to be trading probably as many guys as they can at this point. If it's Rengifo, great. I think that would be a fantastic pickup. If it's Estevez, it gives you an eighth inning guy. I don't think they want to move MacArthur off the closer's role, but having then Schreiber, Estevez, and MacArthur for the 7th, 8th, and 9th feels a little bit better, and you'd feel a little bit more whole with that team. So to me, it's the Angels who I'm targeting, because I think the Angels have guys that aren't going to cost as much. The Marlins would be great. Tanner Scott, in my opinion, is going to cost too much. Michael Kopech, great. But we've been hearing stuff about the White Sox asking the moon for every guy they're trying to trade for. And I'm not sure that you want to do that with a team that's already in your own division, because the asking price isn't going to go down for a team like the Royals.
Are there any guys across the league you look at as potential trade candidates? Chris has brought up Vlad Guerrero with me before.
That was a joke on
the Blue Jays.
The Royals do not have enough to get Vlad Guerrero.
Well, I know they don't, but there's been some articles popping up the last few weeks that they've been getting some calls, and the Mariners are looking at it. But are there any guys across the league that you think the Royals have enough to go get and would be willing to pay the asking price that would significantly boost this lineup?
Yeah, it's so tough, because on the National League side, I've tried to do some digging on the National League at each of the rosters and who's going to be a seller. There's like 2 teams that are selling in the National League right now. Everybody else is within 5 games of a playoff spot, and that does make it difficult. Some teams need to be honest with themselves and go,
Washington.
Yes, I was going to just bring up Washington and Hunter Harvey and Kyle Finnegan. You have to look at where you're at and go, our division is only getting better. I mean, they play in the National League East, so they are dealing with the Mets, who are surging. They're dealing with the Phillies, who have one of the best records in baseball. And we know Atlanta is going to be up there as well, playing incredibly well by the end of the season. But I love the idea of Washington trading Kyle Finnegan or Hunter Harvey. I think they'd play really well in the bullpen. I thought it made sense for the Royals to go after them before the season began, when J.J. Bacole was looking at trade outlets. It just so happened that John Schreiber was the guy that he was looking at. But the Nationals need to be more honest with themselves and go, this isn't going to be a team that gets into the playoffs, so we need to get value to pair with our very young core. I look at Colorado, too. Colorado seems like a team you wouldn't want to go after. But one guy that just seems to stick with me, I've mentioned him a few times. The numbers are not good, and I would say even the advanced metrics don't look that good, but it's Justin Lawrence. Justin Lawrence brings you a awkward, funky angle, not quite submarine, but lower than 3/4. And he throws anywhere from 95 to 97 to 98, has a sweeper to go with it. I remember when I looked back in April or May, or maybe it was the end of May. I don't think it was quite June just yet. His numbers away from Coors Field aren't terrible. And I almost wonder if he got to a team that had a good defense, had a big ballpark, those numbers would be even better because you take somebody that throws from an awkward angle and throws that hard. It would be interesting. I don't know if Colorado be looking to move him. Colorado's, kind of a weird team too when it comes to selling. I don't remember them many years at the deadline making any significant moves. But if the Royals are looking for somebody out there, I just continue to hammer in the point. It's got to be through the bullpen. The bullpen's a wide market. It's an affordable market. Yeah, you could go for a bat. I just don't know if there are many guys out there you go and acquire that transforms this lineup. And maybe they don't need a transformation. Maybe they just need an extra bat as a Rengifo, who we just spoke on. But to me, there's just not enough guys out there that move the needle enough for me. It would be one of those pickups where you go, oh, that's interesting. Oh, his numbers are actually better than I thought. We'll see how it works out.
Yeah. Chris, you got any other guys you want to throw at him?
No, I mean, again, the Rockies are weird because like McMahon, Tovar, Doyle, they like their young core, so they're not really moving, even though they should be. I guess I like the Mets bullpen pieces, and that's who I was on forever. And then they go and win 12 of 15 or whatever, stretch it around and get back into the race. I still think the Mets eventually need to be honest with themselves, like getting a Diekman, getting an Ottavino, getting I think Reed Garrett's a little bit of a flash in the pan, but getting someone like that would be huge because they're a World Series or bust kind of team with their owner, and he already kind of admitted that this year probably isn't the year. So even if they're still like 500, I would look at the Mets bullpen pieces as maybe easier additions that the Royals could grab down the stretch. But they got to lose a few more games before that really becomes an option again.
Yeah, they are hot right now. That's for sure. Just a couple of things left I got for you. What do you make of this potential Royals cheating scandal that's starting to gain some talk outside of Kansas City?
Yeah, I will say that the highest form of flattery you can have is opposing fan bases accusing you of cheating because you are either winning games or you are playing above the expectation of what you've given teams. And I know the splits. I know they look completely drastic, but they're not the only team with crazy splits. I mean, look at Seattle this year. Seattle is one of the best teams in baseball at home, and then it can't really seem to do much on the road. But I also bring up the idea of if they are cheating, if they are hacking pitch comms, if they are using some form of sign stealing, well, they got shut out by a 4A guy making his debut just this week and got one run off Yanni Chirino. So if they were cheating, maybe they failed at cheating that night, or the pitch comms weren't getting back to the dugout. But I do think it's all in good fun. I saw that. I thought, honestly, that it was more of just bait, and a lot of Royals fans took it as being serious. I think there is a form of frustration where it's, some fans out there are being serious about cheating. It's nearly impossible now to cheat because of what the Astros did. And I think one of the reasonings that I was kind of cracking up at was, hacking the pitch comm. And I thought to myself, if you were to hack pitch comm and you were to hear what the pitcher's hearing to get to a Royals hitter, how are you relaying it to the Royals hitter without them looking back into the dugout? They don't wear pitch comms. So unless there was somebody on second base, you then relay to the second guy on second base, and then he were to be able to look in and see that, and the catcher's not protecting his signal, which they don't do anymore. They use the pitch comm. It would be nearly impossible. But then I think there was cameras in the dugout or figuring out ways how to do it. It'd be very complex. And if the Royals were pulling that off, it'd be one of the most unbelievable heists that we've ever seen of being able to hack technology like that. But I think it was all in good fun. And, I will always say it goes back with the Chiefs as well. When opposing fans think that you're cheating or rigging the game, that just means that you are right where you want to be.
Ultimate sign of respect.
It is the greatest sign of respect. And I will say that the Royals at this point are relevant enough to their rivals to accuse them of cheating.
Yeah. That's what was wild. It was just the Twins and Guardian fans for like ever. And then all of a sudden this last week, you started seeing it pop up on some of like the non-division people. I was like, what are we doing here?
It is crazy.
And to be honest, I didn't know anything about it until Chris asked me about it last night, and I was like, "What? How?
Yeah, it
We're
doesn't
only a
make
few games above 500. If we're really doing it, then we should be a lot better." But I don't know. I still think even if we were cheating, to me, baseball is the one sport that once the pitcher has the ball in his hand from sign to delivery, that happens so fast. I don't know how these guys, with any advantage they can get, can react quick enough to a 100-mile-an-hour fastball or a 97-mile-an-hour
Yep.
sinker coming your way, even if you know it's coming. Unless you're Aaron Judge, because if he gets bat on ball, it's gone. Last thing I want to end up here with, Royals again had a very, very strong weekend against Cleveland. Quite impressive series win, 3-1. Good turnout this weekend from the fan base. What about this series coming into July? What takeaways do you have from it that can propel us forward into not just July, but to a potential playoff push?
Yeah, I mean, a series like this weekend was so massive on a lot of different levels. Number one, you had a really hot division rival coming in. It was not like Cleveland was slumping. They had just taken a series from Baltimore and almost swept Baltimore. And, it was your first chance to take on Cleveland at home. You had not been playing your best baseball. But I had looked at this series as the last opportunity they truly had to gain some significant ground on Cleveland. They lose that series to Cleveland, you can kiss the division race goodbye. They would have been, I think, at that point, 11 games back. That may not seem like a lot, but to have 11 games go your way and 11 games not go their way for a really good baseball team, you're just kind of hoping and praying for a miracle to happen. But the last part I would say for it, they had huge crowds this weekend, all the way from Thursday to Sunday. I was there yesterday. It was near 30,000. It is very clear at this point, people are buying in. And to keep people buying in, you have to play well in front of those large crowds because you're bringing out people that stopped coming years ago. Like, let's all be honest here. There is a portion here in Kansas City that will only show up if the Royals are good, if they are a playoff team. There are fans that watched their last Royals game on what would have been November 1st or October 31st or November 1st of 2015, maybe watched a little in 2016 and said, oh, they're not that good anymore. I'm done watching. And then maybe haven't watched until again. So to keep those fans coming back, which every fan base has them, you don't have to be as harsh as calling them fair weather fans or bandwagon fans. The reality is you need them for sold out crowds. You need to bring people back that were not as invested, or it's, wow, this is actually cool. Like, I'm a big Chiefs fan, but the Royals have never really interested me, but they're selling out games. They're a playoff team. That's interesting to me. And the way you do that is beating good teams in front of big crowds, because they're going to go, wow, I was at the game on Sunday. They played really well. Their pitcher, Seth Lugo, threw 6 shutout innings. Bobby Witt Jr. hit a triple to left field. Salvador Perez homered. They're fun to watch. It's one thing to play well on the road or play well in front of 15,000. When you play well in front of those big crowds, it's going to start get this feel back in Kansas City of, we're in it for the long haul. This is going to be a fun season. This is going to be a playoff season. And even if they don't win the World Series, it will feel like baseball is finally back in Kansas City. And you're hoping it's not a one-off year where next year they regress. But this has been such a fun and exciting summer so far. And now we're to July 1st. And I don't think the Royals have played a game over or been over 500 on July 1st since 2017.
Yeah.
And they weren't particularly close any other time on July 1st. So now it's July, August, and September. You've made it through April, May, and June. It's now the back half of the schedule. And they're in a good spot right now to keep people entertained and engaged for the entire year.
And the Royals are still, in the last 10 years, one of the hottest second half teams, which is just wild to me. But yeah, they've got 23 games in the month of July, relatively favorable schedule. I'm looking at it going, I think there's 13 to 15 winnable games. And then some that, if they give their best stuff, they have a shot. The nice thing is almost night in and night out, you feel like you're going in with most of the time the pitching advantage from the starting pitching. But yeah, 2 weeks until All-Star break, get a little bit of time to recoup, recover, take a break. Hopefully we're seeing a couple guys at the All-Star game. Would love to see Seth Lugo get that nod for starter, but there's a lot of really good pitching in the AL right now. Do you think the Royals get 3 or 4 All-Star votes, All-Star
Gosh, I mean, they're going to get Salvi and Bobby in there, no question about it. I'm going to be floored if Seth Lugo does not make it. I unless he implodes in these final 2 starts, which he hasn't imploded in, 18 starts now. Like, his implosion was 5 runs against Cleveland. That was it. That's the worst start he's had, and he went 6 innings, if I'm not mistaken, or right under that. So that's the implosion he had. If they keep out the guy who's leading the league in ERA and leading the league in innings, that's just malpractice. That's just an absolute snub at its finest. And I think he deserves to be in because he's a cool story as well. He's a reliever turned starter and has some of the best numbers, at least just the basic numbers of ERA and innings and quality starts. If he's not in and just represented there, it doesn't mean he has to get into the game, but if he's not in there, that's just the All-Star game not doing their duties here, because it's about the best players being there, and you can't have the best American League players there and not have the guy that's leading the league in innings, leading the league in ERA, and leading the league in quality starts.
Yeah,
I think he could be the starter. I mean, I know that's probably going to go to Skubal, if you asked him to pick one today, but him and Lugo and Houck are right on his tail.
Yeah.
So I think he's in that class of 3 of the guys. I don't even know if he could go. He could have 2 terrible outings. I think he's still in the game, but as of right now, as far as I'm concerned, he's a lock. Can he do well enough to steal the start away from Skubal or not?
Yeah.
And he has officially bumped himself into top 5 AL Cy Young.
There you go.
According to FanDuel and DraftKings. He's now surpassed Cole Reagans and then that part, even though Cole Reagans is right there with him. But all right, that's all we got for now. Jack, we always appreciate when you hop on with us and talk some Royals baseball. Always impressed that you're able to do this daily and come up with great content all the time to let us know about what's going on behind the scenes. Appreciate you taking the time as always. Chris, you got anything else for him?
No, I just always enjoy talking ball with you, Jack.
Hey, anytime, guys. Love you guys having me on. Always a blast, and I'm looking forward to next time.
Awesome. Well, of course, you can go check him out on the Locked On Royals podcast anywhere you get your podcast. You can also hit him up on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. Love sending questions his way. He's tuned in and tied into all that's going on with the Royals. So, again, thanks for joining us. Those of you watching, again, hit that like and subscribe button below. Make sure you're checking us out on all of our social media platforms. Send the podcast to a friend. Help us get over 700 subscribers as we push on through the middle months of the summer into all that the sports world has for us. But until next time, that'll do it on this episode of the KC Sports Authority podcast. We'll catch you guys later.